Welcome back, everybody, to the Radical Center. I am so grateful for, or we are so grateful for all of the listeners that we've had so far. We really appreciate it. We hope you keep coming back. We hope we are giving you some value for your time. We know your time is valuable. So just, keep letting us know what you think. We are reading all the comments and we do take them very seriously. I've noticed that different episodes seem to take off. The week before that was YouTube, so we'll see which platform gets a lot of attention this week. So Cody, how are you? It's been a long week for me. How are you doing?
Yeah, it's been a long week for me. I'll be honest. This was not the greatest week of the year between truck troubles and if people at home can tell, I'm a little bit congested because it's that time of year. Hopefully they don't tune my voice out when I speak because I do have a lot to say today.
That's great to hear. I love that you always have a lot to say. I think, you do sound, a little bit congested, but I think you still sound pretty good. I don't think anyone's going to be like, oh my God, I can't listen to Cody today. So hopefully all is going to be well. Let's start with our first topic of the day, or of the week. There's a new provincial poll that still shows a PC lead. It looks like a pretty strong PC lead. We're talking about 42.3%. That's definitely a strong majority territory. The projection they're talking about is 89 seats, which is pretty wild. It's more than what they have today. And the majority probability is 98.6%. What is going on in this province, Cody? What is happening? Why is Doug Ford that strong?
Well, it's been a good few weeks for the Ford government, I believe. We talked about tariffs a lot last week. It seems that Doug Ford, he's quickly able to adapt to the changing environment around him. And you talked about last week how Doug Ford came in. He was highly unpopular at the beginning, but then he realized that he had to change course and he had to pivot more to the center. So I think what you're seeing here is you're seeing a very dominant incumbent government, and they are bucking the trends of, the recent elections that we see, where incumbent governments either lose government or they lose support. A lot of that we'll talk about a lot today has to do with a weak opposition. If you look at the Main Street poll that we have on the screen, it shows that the NDP would be at 23 seats with 21% of the vote, and then the Ontario Liberals, they actually get more of the popular vote at 26%, but they get only half the seats. They get 10 seats. So yeah, I think it's a good week for the this poll. This poll was a good week for the Ford government. But what do you think?
I think for sure. I think that Doug Ford has a certain appeal that appeals to the average Ontarian. I feel like he can kind of speak to a lot of different people who are and again, I think his centrist. I've said this before, and I think his success post that first year when they were, doing all the cuts and he got booed at the Raptors parade. I remember that very clearly. I think, he moved to the center and he is speaking to the average Ontarian. He recognizes people's problems and he is there to solve people's problems. And he says that, this is something that's bothering you, and I know that it's bothering you, and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to fix it. Does he do everything right all the time? No, I don't think any government does. Are there some things that, I think he gets stuck on, and then usually with the left that, don't really necessarily, I don't know if they necessarily help, but I don't think they hurt him. So there's been a few of those that have happened over the years. For example, I'll use Ontario Place, right? So there's this big fight over Ontario Place, and the opposition parties are talking about it. Of course, the NDP is, championing this whole thing about Ontario Place. I understand why that's so important for a local community, right? Don't see that translating in votes in places like Peel. Like, even the science center, right? There's a lot of talk about the science center in Ontario Place, and they've. I feel like the opposition focused so much on things that are perhaps local issues that the opposition leader should talk about once or twice, and then the local candidate or MPP, if they have one, should go from there rather than make it a larger provincial issue, because quite frankly, people in Mississauga, in Brampton, in Brantford, in areas that are so far away from the Science Center or Ontario Place, aren't really going to. They may care about it a little bit if they do at all, but they're not going to vote based on that issue. Like, I think someone has to call up the opposition leaders and just tell them, look, people vote on particular issues that are important to them, that impact them directly. And if you're not talking about an issue that's impacting people directly, they're not going to vote for you. So, I mean, that's my little spiel. I think I went on a very long rant here, but I think that's where his success is. He speaks to the average person. People are sick of congestion. They are tired of the cost of living rising. They are not happy with the management of the Trudeau government, of the economy. He talks about things that are important to people, that are impacting the vast majority of people. And I think the opposition, both opposition parties, or three of them if you want to count also the Greens, are not talking about that.
Oh, and I think too, the one benefit of Doug Ford, and I listened to his interview on News Talk 1010 this week with it was Deb Hutton, and he speaks plain English. There's no gobbledygook. There's no I'm smarter than you, I know better for you talk, right? He's very plain spoken. He hands out his phone number. He responds to phone calls. And, he was saying that he was helping somebody who was stuck in the snowstorm up in, I think it was Huntsville. And he's not even the city councilor up there. I mean, she couldn't get a hold of the city councilor, but she was able to get a hold of the Ontario premier, which is just crazy. He's the guy that helps people, dig their cars out of snow, right? So a lot of it is that folksy talk, but yeah, I think he's grown, and I think, again, I guess we agree on this, that when the next election is, I think he'll win.
Yeah, and I think, at this point, I don't think it's 98% according to the most recent poll, and not just win, but a majority government. Let's talk about one of the leaders of the opposition, or, the new leader of the Liberal Party. Not so new anymore. It's been over a year now. She's had a rough time. I think that is an understatement. I think she admits that. She admitted it in a recent article this week with the Toronto Star. Things are not going well for the Ontario Liberal Party, even though they have this star candidate as a leader that's supposed to garner a lot of attention and get a lot of coverage and spark up the party. I guess spark up, is that even a word? I don't even know. But what do you think is happening with the Ontario Liberals? Why is Bonnie Crombie struggling this much? Where do you think she went wrong? And I know you have a lot of opinions on this. I have a lot of opinions on this. So, I hope our listeners are going to enjoy the next segment,
Yeah.
because this topic is going to be a while.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start off by saying that, I think we should name this show the Bonnie Crombie Show, because she's definitely gunning for attention. Like, I don't think there's no argument over that. But I read an article in the Toronto Star that I'll put up on the screen, and I kind of thought, you know what, this is going to be a good puff piece from the Toronto Star that'll be a good profile and courage, and it'll make her look good. I read it, and I don't know if I was reading words backwards or something, but it was a terrible article. Now, you're right, she does admit that she didn't really realize what she was getting into. You got to understand, this party's in third place, and this party has been decimated because of their terrible record. I think what really caught me off guard was some of the things that she said in here that she got, like, I don't understand. Like, she said, I got sold a bill of goods. Like, I thought the saying was you get sold a false bill of goods, right? She also says that when she got there, she felt she was an experienced, polished leader, which was true, but that she didn't realize it was going to be this hard. And that's kind of like, that's really like, that's being blind. But we'll talk more about the carbon tax, her carbon tax position. But what do you think?
I think it would have been naive of anyone stepping into that role and into that position to think that they're going to take a party that has no resources, no staff, like we're talking about 8 seats. Like this is really, really rough territory to get out of, and just expect it to be easy. Right? Or not even, I don't think she expected it to be easy. Perhaps she didn't think it would be this hard that she wouldn't be able to move the needle. And the reality is they made mistakes. I think it's not a secret. I was involved in her leadership, and I was a very big supporter of hers until that changed. But they've made several mistakes in the early days of her leadership. And it's hard to recover from some of that stuff. It's really hard to recover from some of that stuff, especially when you are also haunted by a very unpopular federal leader. And people can't tell the difference, right? Once the brand has been associated with something, it's hard to come back from that, right? And now the brand, the Liberal brand, federally, provincially, is heavily associated with the carbon tax, which is an extremely unpopular policy. And anybody who supports the carbon tax or is on record having supported the carbon tax is someone who, people are not going to be happy about. And, I saw an email that came out from the PC fundraising folks, and it talked about Bonnie Crombie's carbon tax candidates, right? This is a very, very hard territory to get out of, especially when people are on record supporting it, when she's been on record supporting it. So I think her number one biggest mistake was not distancing herself from the carbon tax and from Trudeau early on, right? She tried to do it this week, and I'll talk a little bit about that. One, it's too late. And two, she did it in a way that's now going to piss off the federal party. And remember, they're in government and you're not. So they're not going to come help you if you're going to say things in a way that's going to jeopardize any kind of working together. So there was a better way to do this. It should have been early on. It should have been the first thing she said after she won the leadership in the media. She should have said there will be no carbon tax in Ontario. And that's all she had to say. She didn't have to say, I don't like Trudeau and I tell him he's wrong. And she doesn't have to say any of that. All she had to say is, on day one, I'm the leader of this party. There will not be a carbon tax in Ontario if I become premier. She did not do that. They waffled and went back and forth, and she said things and she had to take things back and all sorts of things. And now they're in a situation where the brand has already been heavily associated with a very unpopular policy, and you can't undo that psychologically in people's minds that easily. It's really, really hard to do that. So that's one. And the other thing, I will talk about this because I think it's important for the Liberal Party to finally get this message. The Liberal Party's support is a little bit like, it's not like the Conservative support. Conservative support, they have like a base, right?
Right.
They have an
30% right off the bat.
Right. 30%. They're not going anywhere. They're not voting for anyone else. They want the Conservative to be in government forever, right? So they have that. So they kind of can get away with some things because of that, right? They can get away with saying certain things or taking hard positions on some unpopular issues because of that. The NDP, similar in a way, but on the left. Less percentage, a much smaller percentage of their hardcore ideological support, but they have that. They have some of that. The Liberals don't have that. You don't have, 20% or 30% who are like going to vote for you no matter what you do or say, because they just cannot possibly imagine voting for the other guys like the left and the right do. So what the party support looks like, what the Liberal Party support usually looks like, is it's kind of like a puzzle, right? So you got a little bit from here, a little bit from there, from this community, from that community, from this stakeholder group, and then you have to put it all together in order for it to fit, for everything to work together. And if one piece is missing, is missing from that puzzle, the whole thing crumbles. And that's how conservatives get into government. Conservatives don't win government. It's the liberals that, liberal puzzle that crumbles, basically. And they don't seem to understand that. I don't know how people don't understand that after decades of doing this. And what they did, a very, very important issue that she really had no business talking about, she really didn't need to even touch at all, but she did for some reason, is, all the issues around the war, right? You have a community that votes for you regularly, right? And I'm from the Muslim community, I'm from the Arab community. Growing up in the Muslim and Arab community in Canada, if you don't vote Liberal, you're a traitor, right? You can't even say the word conservative. So you have that strong relationship, and then you break it in a very, 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 what's the word I'm looking for? In a way that you can't repair, right? At least for a very long time. So now you have a big piece of a puzzle that's missing, and it's 5% of the population, right? Even if the voter turnout is not that high, it's still, votes that are coming to you as part of your base that's never going to go anywhere. They stay home, you don't win. We saw that happen to the Democrats in Michigan. That's exactly what we saw. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. And the Liberals don't understand that their support base is a puzzle. It's a puzzle that you have to continuously work on. You have to continuously maintain relationships. You don't get to be a queen, right? You don't get to be, I'm a celebrity, people are just going to love me. It doesn't work that way. It does not work that way with Liberal Party supporters. And unfortunately, they've made a lot of mistakes right off the bat. I know this is a very long rant, but I had to get it off my chest. And I think some of these things are not going to be repairable in the next, year and a half or 2 years, whenever the next election will be.
Well, it's kind of hard for me to one up that in any way. The only thing that I would say is I was looking for the quote in the article because I admit I didn't highlight it before. But to sum a lot of it up, I like the puzzle analogy. That was very good. You put it into perspective for me, anyways, as a conservative. The quote here it's an unnamed liberal veteran. It says, "This party is like a startup. There is no infrastructure. There is no money." And then he goes on to say that I think Bonnie got sold a bill of goods. It's not an easy job. If you're in the third place one more time, I don't know what the future is. So that's what I was talking about. I was wrong. It wasn't Bonnie that said that, but it was a senior, I guess, liberal veteran, whatever. They're not named. But yeah, I think you're 100% right. And I just learned something about the Liberal Party. It's like a puzzle.
It's a puzzle. It's a puzzle, and it's delicate, and you have to, do it properly, and it's consistent, and, lots of work that goes into it, and you can't let it just fall apart. So I do agree with that unnamed source that, it's a tough place for the party to be in, and, this is where they're at. But she did have a little bit of good news, little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, let's call it. There was a tweet that we saw, or I guess we have to say exposed now, although I still say tweet, I don't care.
Yeah.
And
Tweet. It's tweet. It'll always be a tweet.
It will always be a tweet. According to this post by a former Ontario Liberal candidate,
Mississauga Center, I believe, right? I think that's what her Twitter says.
Yeah. Bonnie raised $1.6 million at the leaders' dinner. I haven't seen this anywhere else. I don't know if you have, but I'm not sure, that's the only place I've seen that number. But what do you think of that? Is it a sign of things that maybe are starting to get a little bit better? What's happening there?
Well, Kamala Harris, she got $1.5 billion to run a national campaign, and she got her ass kicked. Donald Trump only spent $1 billion. So, I mean, if you look back at the fundraising, I sent this article to you in June. Was the last, I think, the last update we got from all the parties. Doug Ford and the PC party is still leaving, um, entering into what is probably going to be an election campaign with a $9 million surplus. And if you think about that, you have 80 something incumbents already in place, already ready to go. You have the infrastructure. And, this $1.6 million, I'm not going to say it's not a lot of money. It is a lot of money. That's probably enough money about to run all ridings in the city of Mississauga, because I think it's between 150 and $200,000 is roughly what they spend on these campaigns. I don't think it's energy. I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think it was one good night for them, and I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I also think that you still have to catch up, right? So even if you are raising $1 million, again, he's at 9 million. I think I can't remember if this was the last dinner or the one before that, but he had a dinner that raised $6 million in one night. So I don't see it as things are just going to turn a corner and get better. But maybe now that she has distanced herself significantly from the carbon tax, some angry liberals might be coming back. So people who are already within the tent, but they were just kind of holding off because they just really don't like the carbon tax. And there's a lot of people within the Liberal Party who also don't like the carbon tax. So it's not just the public. So maybe some liberals who are unsure about where she's going to stand on these issues, that I think there are elements of the party that see Trudeau as a little bit too left wing for their liking, and they saw Kathleen Wynne as similar. And I think with Bonnie in the beginning not really taking stances on these issues, it was kind of looking like, is she also going to go in that direction? Where now she is becoming a little bit more, I am the centrist voice, right? I am going to lead a centrist party. I am going to govern from a centrist perspective. And I think that's bringing back liberals who would have otherwise said, I don't really want anything to do with this right now. I don't know if this is going to translate to the average person. Again, it's still a big gap, right? Like 1 million, even if we're just talking about that dinner, he still raises a lot more at his dinners, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes. We'll see if her trajectory changes. I still expect a pretty strong majority government for Doug. I don't really expect much change, especially in the 905s. I don't expect any change in Brampton for sure, because of the relationships there, and the previous strong stance against Brampton, and let's kick them out of the region and stuff like
Yeah.
that, or get rid of the region or whatever it is. And there's certain things you can do and say as a strong mayor of a city that you maybe rightfully should, that will come back to haunt you if all of a sudden you want to become premier of a whole province that includes the city that you are fighting with. So there, I think, I don't see much change. I don't think this is going to change much. I just think perhaps liberals who were waiting on the sidelines, or are unsure about where her policies stood, are starting to come.
Yeah, you're right. You're definitely right about Brampton. There's two rising stars of the Ontario PC party in Brampton, and that's the Minister of Transportation, Prabmeet Sarkaria, and the Brampton North MPP, Graham McGregor. They are two, I would say, probably one of the top leaders in the Ontario PC party. They are very well liked in their community, and they're not afraid to speak their mind. And I think that's one of the reasons why Doug Ford has elevated them to positions in cabinet. Last thing that I would say is, just to put everything into context, there are a bunch of upcoming fundraisers, and For the PC party, they're holding, and the NDP is coming in with a whopping number of zero public fundraisers. Oh, they're keeping up with the number of fundraisers that are being hosted. It's the ticket cost and how much money they are able to raise is going to be the real tell.
Yeah, for sure. Now that we talked a little bit about Brampton, I want to talk about this one issue. It's, a Brampton mayor, federal politics combined. Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown is saying that foreign interference did not have anything to do with the leadership race. It's been something he has been in the news for. He's trying to stay out of it. He doesn't want to get drawn into this political fight that's happening between the Feds and the Conservatives on foreign interference. I'm a big fan of Patrick, always have been. So shout out to Patrick. I don't know if he listens to us, but I hope you do. Tell us what you think of that. What do you think of him deciding to take a strong, just kind of put it aside, just put this thing to an end? Do you think it's good for him? What do you think?
Well, I'll start off with echoing your comments. I I really like Patrick Brown. I always have. Politically and personally, he's a very nice guy. Him and I have not always agreed on things, and we've had the type of relationship in the past where, I've got no BS and no filter with him. So if I think that he's doing a terrible job or I think he's doing something bad, I tell him and I tell him straight to his face. And to his credit, he always takes it and he doesn't hold any grudges. When it comes to this foreign interference thing, you had mentioned last week that there are a number of traps that not the Ontario, the federal Liberals are going to set for Pierre Poilievre. I think this is one of them. He was asked first. He wasn't summoned. He was asked to testify in front of the committee, and he said that he didn't want to do it. But then they voted to force him to testify. They summoned him. And he did. He put out a letter, and I'll quote from his letter. I have no reason to believe that such interference altered the final outcome of the 2022 Conservative Party of Canada leadership race. I have no new evidence to contribute to the committee's proceedings, and am concerned that my appearance has been sought for political reasons rather than a matter of substantive policy. Now, the one thing that did come out of this is it, I guess, I don't know, allegation or whatever you want to call it, that one of his top leadership on his campaign, MP Michelle Gardner, apparently she was, I guess, pressured by, again, I don't know what to call this, but I guess people who were trying to lobby on behalf or influence decision making on behalf of the Indian government. They wanted her to revoke her support. I don't really know, like, if that really cuts through to the public, because even I was trying to figure out a simple way of trying to explain this. Like I said, when it comes to foreign interference, what's happening in the world right now is you have China, Russia, and India. They're jockeying to become economic and military superpowers depending on what country. And they don't care who wins the next election. They don't care if it's a conservative or a liberal or an NDP or whoever. Their goal is to sow maximum distrust in our election system and to have us fighting against each other to damage the integrity of our democracy. And I will take Patrick Brown at his word. He testified under oath, so that's at the under penalty of perjury, as they call it. But I don't know. There was not really any big headlines that came out of this testimony when there were Liberal MPs making it seem like this was going to be a big bombshell. But I do think that if Patrick Brown had something to offer that committee, that he would tell the truth, because he's a lawyer, right? He knows that if he lies under oath, that he could go to jail. And the second thing is, he's a man of integrity. I've got no reason to doubt his testimony.
I also don't think he has anything to lose on this, right? Either way, I think,
Or gain. Like, he's got nothing to gain either, right?
yeah, it was just kind of like, keep me out of it. I gave all the information that I have, and I don't want to be in the middle of your political traps, as we said. So we'll see how that plays out. We'll see how it goes. Thank you so much for all your insight and our great discussions, Cody. I really enjoy this every week. I look forward to it. And we will name the episode Let's Talk About Bonnie. How about that?
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do that. And to our listeners, thank you very much for joining us again. Please join us again and again and again. Subscribe, like, share, tell your friends. There's 2 new voices talking about Canadian politics and provincial politics in Ontario that of listening to at least once, and see if you want to follow us and listen to us again. Thank you, everyone. And hopefully you have a wonderful week ahead. And we'll be back next week with another episode of The Radical Center.
Take care, everyone.